so that these can be posted. So if you are unable to hear or lose connection at some point, we'll get these posted at a later date on our website. You're also welcome, if you have trouble today, to join us at any of the other trainings. The session today is the LEAD process refresher. This session is designed for individuals that have a lot of experience doing LEAD. I'm not going to cover a lot about how to create the file in Infinite Campus, how to upload it to our website. We are going to talk a little bit about reading the LEAD reports, just because that's always a good thing to have a bit of a refresher. So we'll talk about the submission dates and timelines, just as a reminder of what's going on with those. Common pitfalls, updates and changes for 2013-14. There are some changes as far as things that KDE needs out of the system that relate to LEAD. So I'm talking about those today. I will give a disclaimer of please don't shoot the messenger. Most of these are not things that we are mandating, but because you all interact with it, I want to make sure that you're aware of it and can pass that along to your schools. We'll go through the common pitfalls of LEAD and some things that trip us up every year. Just a real quick look at what's going to be in the LEAD manual. The LEAD manual will hopefully be posted by the end of the week, if not by the end of next week. And then we'll just review, just as we get ready to get started here in a month or so, the upload steps and how to look at the report comments. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to type them in the chat box. You will be getting a survey from me after the training is over about your experience today. And then I'll be doing ELA credit based on the results of that survey. Not that you have to give me a good review, but based on getting those surveys back, I'll be sending out ELA certificates later this week. All right, submission dates for this year. We're on the same basic timeline that we've been for the last couple of years. We will start up on September 3rd, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. Because Labor Day falls very early this year, LEAD will be starting pretty early again this year. Deadline, as has been in the last few years, is November 1st, which is a Friday this year. So you can put LEAD to bed and then have a really good weekend. Spring reporting is going to run just like it has the last few years, January 15th to February 28th. So slightly shorter window, but about the same as it has been. And then we'll roll straight from spring LEAD reporting into highly qualified reporting on March 1st. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute my phone in my office. Pacing dates for this fall semester, they're very similar to the recommended targets that we've had the last few years. These are our targets. They're not hard, fast dates like our start and finish date are. So these are just things to help you kind of keep with the flow of LEAD and making sure you're hitting certain pacing points so that you're not behind on getting LEAD started. We highly recommend that everyone have their first file uploaded by around September 20th. Gives you a good early start to take a look at certification information and plenty of time to clean up any other errors. We recommend by the end of September, so 1 month in, that you have all staff warnings resolved. That's the no courses error, the Social Security number not found in EPSB database errors. So we recommend that happens that early. Ongoing, you'll need to have your schools make assignment corrections, continue to export and upload. Most of you have done this long enough that you are aware of how an interactive, repetitive process this is. So it's something that you will do over and over and over again. We do expect Munis data on or around October 4th. That data fluctuates depending on KDE's time schedule. Do not sign off on your Munis data and on your LEAD report until your Munis data is in. And I'll notify you all as that starts rolling in. We recommend that you try to have as many of your edits, just the basic edits, done by October 7th as far as correcting populations and content and things like that. By October 10th, if you have any outstanding statement of eligibility errors, please check with your KTIP coordinator. The deadline for KTIP is, as usual, October 15th. We will likely, as the last couple of years have been, run out of slots before we get to that date, or we've been right up on it at that date. So work closely with your KTIP coordinators. Remember, anyone that's in as a first-year teacher that has not yet done KTIP is required to do KTIP, and so you need to get them in as fast as possible. We do recommend by around October 21st that you switch over from editing at the local level to editing online only. So stop working in Infinite Campus on or around that date and move over to working on our website. November through January, update and verify your roles. We do try to do an auto update of the role of teacher, although we are down staff right now in our IT division, so that may or may not happen. Ultimately, that one is a responsibility of the district to ensure that those roles get updated. Then the spring pacing targets are almost exactly the same. January 28th, try to have your first upload in. February 4th, staff warnings resolved. February 11th, most edits. You know, the KTIP deadline of February 15th, the biggest thing with that deadline is anyone that is enrolled, that is hired after February 15th that would normally have needed to do KTIP has to go on an emergency certificate by regulation because they're no longer able to get into KTIP. So that's an important timeline as far as making sure that those confirmations of employment are in, even if it is a paper confirmation when we run out of slots. We recommend by February 15th that your school level administration have an opportunity to review your full data reports. As a lead-in to highly qualified, you want to make sure that the lead data is accurate so that your HQ report data is accurate. On or around February 21st, we do recommend that you switch from editing at the local level to editing online. And then the deadline is February 28th, with HQ reporting starting on March 1st. If you are late signing off on your lead report, your principals won't be able to start yet on their HQ report. So that's something to be aware of as far as timing goes. Now, updates and changes. Really on our end, as far as lead is concerned, we have not changed anything here. The process is going to be the same. I want to talk briefly about the teaching methods. These did change in November, December timeframe, in time for the spring lead report last year. They are used for lead. They are used for KDE tracking of specific course types. This teaching method drop down, when it expanded this past year, has gone into a whole lot of other usages. It's now part of the school report card as far as how they're looking at credit recovery classes and distance learning classes and things like that. It is very important that you get these in and correct. Please be aware that if a course has multiple teaching methods, such as you have an Algebra 1 course that's being offered by direct instruction and by Plato and for credit recovery, all three of those will need separate course numbers in your Infinite Campus system. They'll have the same state course code, but they'll need separate course numbers in your Infinite Campus system. Accuracy of these is very important because it does impact how things clear for lead and a lot of other things that people are looking at now. There is an ad hoc report that was put in place last year right about the time these were changing to help you find courses that are linked to the old teaching methods. It is under the state published ad hoc reports called Curriculum Lead Invalid Teaching Method. The courses that you are inputting now, you have to use the new codes. However, if it is a course that has rolled over from the previous year or years, it may still have one of those old invalid teaching methods. So please make sure that you've run this report to make sure all of your codes are up to date, because that does need to be updated. This is the new list. There was, during the beginning of year training that Infinite Campus did last week, there was a session on the new lists, on the definitions of those. And then my part of the beginning of the year training also included kind of how we clear with these. This is the new list, though, and you'll notice there are some duplicate things as far as digital learning provider, credit recovery digital learning provider, and then NAF if your school's an NAF academy, dual credit, things like that. So it really is kind of getting down to the finite level of how are things being taught. Now, LEAD and teacher-student data link / teacher of record. Scheduling accuracy is very important to ensure what we call correct, strong teacher-student data links. And this is going into the growth and evaluation system concept. The teacher of record data standard has a definition of who a teacher of record is in Kentucky. It is the certified teacher who's been assigned the lead responsibility for the student's learning. Basically, it's the same concept we've used for LEAD and highly qualified. Who is doing the teaching? Who's in charge of the students in the class? For the teacher of record, you want to make sure that the primary teacher is the certified teacher. Every course must have a primary teacher. And especially for things like distance learning, that still does need to be a certified teacher physically in the class as the primary teacher. Teacher and section staff, these are individuals who have been assigned responsibility to provide additional services. Individuals that are listed under the teacher drop-down are going to have access to grade books and attendance. Individuals added as section staff do not have access. It is important to note that with the SIT system, only one additional teacher will pull in, and it will pull from the teacher drop-down before it pulls from the section staff. That is something to be very aware of if you ever have teacher assistants, paraprofessionals that take attendance for your classes, and they're listed up under teacher, and your special ed teachers are listed under section staff, but you want them to be the group that sees everything in SITs. That's not going to happen if you've got somebody else up in that teacher drop down. So make sure you've got those in the right order as far as how you want SITs access to happen. Elementary scheduling, and again, this is a don't shoot the messenger note here. The new data standards for elementary scheduling came out last year, and they do require students be assigned to sections where the primary teacher is the person that is actually providing the content. What this means for elementary schools is that the only thing that they can't have a single self-contained classroom as the only thing that we see. They can still link their students to a self-contained classroom, but they will also need to link them to math and reading and any other content that they're receiving to the actual teacher that's providing that content. Those content courses must be scheduled within the instructional minutes of the day. If you want to be able to set up your courses so that you can sort by homeroom, you can do a multi-period schedule, or you can do a single-period schedule. Either one of those is fine. The sample that we have here is one that KDE developed as a sample, and it's a multi-period schedule. You'll notice that both of these are in the instructional minutes. That's the important part, because those are also going to be what pulls into LEAD, our courses that are in the instructional minutes. This will help solve a big problem that we've had in LEAD in the past, where special ed collaborating teachers are linked to courses, but they happen to be outside the instructional minutes. It will also help solve the problems when we have middle school certified teachers in departmentalized classes at the elementary school in 5th grade or 6th grade. So that's going to help with that. It is important to make sure that any of the courses that are not homeroom courses are not marked for attendance. As long as the course that you do for attendance, if you do a 2-period schedule, as long as that course spans both periods, then they'll still only have to take attendance one time a day. Your specialty classes like art and music and PE also need to be assigned to the teacher that actually provides that content instruction with students linked under them. So the days of doing one music class for an entire elementary school are over based on this. So you're going to want to make sure that the students are linked to the teachers. Right now, the growth and evaluation system. They're getting growth percentiles, grades 4 through 8 in reading and math. But there are going to be other measures that are going to be used to evaluate these teachers, and this will allow them to see their students in SITs and all of that coming together. Rotation classes is something else that is very different this year. And again, these were in the data standards last year. I put this information in LEAD manually than last year as this was coming into draft form. But we are not going to be able to do a middle school or even a high school rotation class with just one course number and a 909999 state course code. Those are going to need to be linked to the actual content that they are teaching, especially in the middle school when we tend to have an art rotation, a PE rotation, a music rotation, and maybe, let's say, a computer rotation. Those will now need to be scheduled as 4 separate classes. And then if your school wants to do a single grade at the end of the year, which is a lot of these do, a composite grade can be done. KDE has directions on how to set up that composite grade using the grading standards. There's a link there. It is also available in the actual data standards that I sent out the other day. But the biggest thing to remember is that you're not going to use one course called Related Arts or Enrichment that covers all of those. Each one of those needs to be scheduled into a separate course that is attached to the appropriate state course code. Speaking of state course codes, something else we want to talk about as it relates to LEAD. Again, state course codes, just like the teaching methods, have a lot of different uses. They are used to determine the content, who can teach it. They are used now to identify courses where an end-of-course exam is required. We've kind of thinned those down a little bit in the state course code lists this year, which is now available on KDE's website as of last week. We did finally get that out. But there's only 2 math classes, 2 English classes, and 2 social studies classes, I believe, that have in red in the state course code list what is that they are end-of-course assessment required. The sciences, there's a lot more flexibility with that because we've got a lot more science courses that can fall into biology. But make sure that if a student is taking a course where an end-of-course exam is required, that it is in one of those state course code matched courses. Data research the state course codes are used for. Again, school report card information, AP information as far as making sure that students are, if you're saying they're in an AP class, are they linked to an AP course? And then it's also used for keys and TEDS linkages as far as co-ops, classes, and how the TEDS linkages happen. Linking is required as of last school year by KDE's regulation. You do want to make sure that you look at the description and not just the title of the course, and use reports to check the code linking. There's a state published ad hoc and then a KDE report, both that can help you find errors with that state course code linking. This is the ad hoc report. It shows the district course number and district course name, and then the state course code and the title that goes with that state course code. You want to have schools review this periodically to make sure that they match. Here's a good example of a mismatch. This course right here, the school is calling Honors English 1. But the state course code for this course is Study Skills, which is clearly not Honors English 1. So you want to make sure that that is linked appropriately. The missing or invalid course codes, some of these have rolled over since before we locked down the codes. There are still districts out there that have codes that have letters in them, which have not been valid ever. And those have been just rolling over, and those courses never get into the LEAD report. So you're missing big chunks of data from those. There are codes that get deprecated every year. This one on the screen is an example of that. 7th grade Honors Language Arts course code is now actually just under the 7th grade Language Arts code. We removed all of the honors titles out of the state course code list a few years ago. So make sure that you use it. We do put on the KDE website every year a change document to help you identify courses that have been removed from the list or added each year. So that's obviously, as I said, not a lot of changes, so to speak, from the LEAD standpoint, more from an Infinite Campus standpoint and a scheduling standpoint. But because they impact LEAD, I wanted you to be aware of them. Quick look at some common pitfalls related to LEAD. First thing is extract errors. Every year we have folks that spend way too much time on the extract errors, and that's the extract summary report that you get as you generate the extract in Infinite Campus. You do want to make sure these errors are resolved, and we've had some goofy errors over the years where they've not been able to resolve them necessarily. But you want to get as many of them as resolved possible, but you don't want to spend so much time on those that you don't upload your report and see what your true certification issues are. So make sure you move forward with uploading while you continue to work on those. The flip side of that is not fixing them at all, because those are data pieces most often that do not get into the LEAD file. So it does cause a serious data quality issue, and you want it as clean as possible. I won't say 100% clean, because there are some times that that's not possible due to some data things with Infinite Campus. But you want it as clean as possible before you get to your final extract. These are the errors that you see on the extract. There will be information in the LEAD manual about how to go about cleaning those up. We've had a problem in the past where it's kind of pulled funny based on some dates, and that is supposed to be resolved this year based on the staff history and things like that. So hopefully that will help us somewhat. A big problem that we have sometimes is missing staff, especially teaching staff. Again, it's a data quality issue. If they're not in LEAD, there's a chance they're not going to show up in the PGES. So you want to make sure that schools do a staff list review within the first 2 to 3 uploads, carefully checking the EPSB and the Student Information System name list, comparing to make sure that there's no errors there. Make sure every staff member has a valid Social Security number in Infinite Campus. If they don't have a SOCH, it doesn't pull. A valid teacher and staff number in Infinite Campus. If they don't have one, Infinite Campus usually doesn't consider them a staff member. And a valid number means that it is only a number. There are no letters, dashes, spaces, anything like that. They also must have a valid district employment and district assignment. There are times that you checked everything like that and you still can't find the error. So sometimes it does require a support ticket to Infinite Campus to let them troubleshoot it and see if they can find where the problem is. Because of this, you want to look at these very early on in LEAD reporting and make sure that you've had a chance to troubleshoot those. This is how to do the staff list review. You want to compare the EPSB name, which is in this column right here, to the SIS name, which is in the far right-hand side, and make sure that they match. Example A is a person that has probably changed their last name. That's not going to cause a problem with LEAD. It will confuse your principals at HQ time, so you'll want to make sure that that does get matched up. The teacher can log in and change their name in our system at any time. Example B is a more serious error where it's 2 different people. That is usually the result of a typo on the social. So you'll want to go back to some non-Infinite Campus data source to check that social. You'll also want to look for any teachers that do not have SIS data, such as the teacher number, the employee type, or the name. If they just have the name and some of the other information's not there, that usually means that they don't have courses attached, and that may be okay depending on if there's an error or not. But if they don't have any of those pieces of data, that means that they are only in the report from Munis and not there from Infinite Campus at all. They have been entirely excluded from Infinite Campus. Often that's a Social Security number issue, and their stuff gets just completely left out of the file. So double check that early to make sure we're not missing people. We actually had districts that had to reopen their lead report after HQ reporting had started and get that fixed. And what had happened was 2 or 3 of their schools had already done HQ reporting and had to go back and redo it. So check it early. The no courses for staff member. Sometimes we can't figure out what's causing it, so it gets ignored. You can find it. Obviously, it's on the front page of your preliminary audit report. Always take a look at the school page first before you flip to each individual, because that school page has some important information on it, especially these staff warnings. It is an acceptable error if the individual's assignment ended after the start of the school year. So if they transferred to another school, if they retired, anything like that, that is okay for that no courses for staff member error to appear. Just email me with why it's on there, and we'll make note of that. Continuing on with that no courses for staff member, if you know that they're supposed to be there and supposed to have courses, you want to make sure that their courses are active in the instructional minutes in the current term. If they're collaborating special ed teacher, they do have to be assigned as an additional teacher. That has to happen in Infinite Campus. And if they do not have their own group of students, you got to kind of think through this. If they're collaborating teacher, then you can assign them as an additional teacher. If they are not a collaborating teacher, if they're actually providing content instruction, you're going to need to assign them a course, and now with the growth and evaluation system, you're going to need to link those to students. Whatever you do, do not change the employee type to support or other to make this go away. If they're a teacher, whether they're a classroom teacher, a special ed teacher, a gifted teacher, a related arts teacher, all of those folks are teachers and should be listed as teacher. Support is for classified staff, and other are for things like your curriculum coaches and folks like that. This one is one that I would like to say is getting better, but I still get people that call me and are completely surprised when I say that a Plato course or a KET course has to have a certified teacher in the classroom as the facilitator. You cannot link the certified teacher and have them just pop in once every 6 weeks and have the class be supervised by a classified person. So don't just link a certified teacher to this to clear lead. Liability-wise and legally, you are required to have a certified person in those positions. Upload errors, the big red stop sign that we're all familiar with, or the error message that looks like this. Both of those are upload errors. Your file only uploads if it says upload successful. So if you get an upload error, email us, let us know that there's a problem, because we can run it through a debug system here. You can prevent some of these upload errors by running ad hoc reports to find errors prior to the first upload. There's a list of ad hoc reports in the lead manual. Check the staff list for duplicated entries. Make sure to train your staff to use the staff locator when entering a new staff member. You search by social security number, looking for that person across the state. And this also helps with our student data links and our linkages as far as historical records go, because that way we know that this teacher was in District A one year and District B the next year. Make sure your staff use the Identities tab when changing names. We still have problems when somebody changes a last name that they create a whole new census record, so make sure that doesn't happen. And make sure that they are only using numerical values for the teacher number. I think we finally got everybody broken of putting pending as the teacher number, but we're still got a few issues with that. But if you get the stop sign, email EPSB LEAD team at ky.gov. That way it goes to me, it goes to our IT department, and we'll go to our director whenever we get one appointed. and so that whole team will be able to see it and help you. The biggest problem with LEAD is not using LEAD for your benefit. That's not using KC and LEAD to take advantage of looking for permissions, to look at the certificate status early on in the school year. You can upload now as early as September 3rd. So you'll only be maybe a month into school, and you can say, hey, these 3 teachers still don't have their paperwork in to renew their certificate. Share it with your HR directors no later than October 1st-ish. Your KTIP coordinators, as far as if there's interns not in KTIP. Look for expired certificates. Look for teachers out of field and find out why did the principal put somebody in that may not be certified, or did they think they were adding a certificate and that didn't happen. Once Munis data arrives, you'll be able to see any new principals that don't have their COEs submitted, so you can get those folks in and activated. But LEAD is not only for us as a state to check certification issues. It can be a tool in your arsenal as far as making sure that your staff are all properly in the right places. So use it to your advantage. By the end of the October 1st through 15th time frame, really your only LEAD errors should be coding issues. You really shouldn't have anybody left on there that doesn't have a certificate at all. If you do, you need to talk to your superintendent, talk to your board attorney about what needs to happen to get that person out of there if they're not going to ever get their certificate. Note about KTIP, and I think I said this earlier, all persons holding only a statement of eligibility must be entered into KTIP. A statement of eligibility is not a certificate. It's not valid for being in the classroom full-time until they're in KTIP. Once we run out of KTIP slots, we will issue them an internship certificate. They just won't participate in KTIP. So as soon as we run out of slots, we switch over from the online system to a paper COE. But they still have to happen immediately as soon as they're hired. Don't wait until it flags up on January's LEAD report if the person was hired in October. Train your principals to use the permissions tool. We've given it to them. Guidance counselors do not have access to the permission tool. It's only principals. But these are content permissions. Please tell them they're not course names. But make sure that your principals are aware that they have access to that. It will help them a lot as they look to move folks around. The LEAD manual is going to be very similar to last year, although there have been enough tweaks to different sections that I'm probably going to post a whole new LEAD manual and not just an excerpt session. But we're going to have the content list again, it shows what areas are HQ required, if that helps your school. The Munis certification reference chart, HQ information, KC directions. There'll be frequently asked questions, a section on student information system documents, and then the PowerPoint for today will be in there. The PowerPoint for the new coordinators that we did this morning will be in there. And then the appendices with the sample LEAD report, the glossary, and then the very, very important keep handy at all times, quick reference to the LEAD steps. Speaking of the LEAD steps, we're going to just do a quick overview of those again this year. You all should be intimately familiar with these at this point. But step 1 happens in Infinite Campus. Before creating the extract file, I do recommend that you run the ad hoc reports. It will help you make sure you don't get one of those stop signs. On the extract page, the data set, you can select just one school. You'll want to do all schools before your final upload. And don't make any changes on the EPSB website when there's just one school up, because that will get overwritten the next time you upload. Format is required as XML for upload to our site. You can use CSV or HTML if you want to look for a specific piece of data. There are occasionally times where we'll need to do that, but be aware that those are both in the raw file format and really won't make any sense to you unless you know some of the decoding things. So the date range, fall report, start of school to the last day of school in December. Do not put any of those as blank because it will run as of the current date, and that's going to miss a whole chunk of time. So make sure that you actually put a date in both fields. Start of school to the last day of school in December. Spring report goes start of school to the last day of scheduled school. I know that when we're running this in January, you may not know what your last day of school is going to be depending on the weather. But put it as whatever your last scheduled day of school is. The schedules are not going to change those last 2 weeks, so even if courses get added, so that's okay. Reporting period, make sure you have fall or spring. The format, as I said, is XML. And then the calendars, you have to have all schools, but you can do either one school or like just your elementary schools if you want to, while you're working through all of your reports. To get to this, it is the Kentucky State reporting and then to the LEAD extract. The extract summary report, that's that error report that we talked about. These are not your LEAD errors. So they do need to be resolved, but you want to move on and upload just to take a look at your real certification issues. Then save and zip the file. Upload to our website. Our system will warn you if the file name is not correct, and if you've done multiple extracts out of Infinite Campus, it may start adding an extension like a 1 or a 2 in parentheses out beside the name. Our system does not like those. It will often bomb when you try to upload. So try to rename your old files or move them to a different folder as you create the files. There are several different acceptable versions as far as whether it has .xml or .xml.zip out to the end. So any of those is acceptable. You do not have to rename your file to get it to upload. If it's telling you it's not going to upload, then there's something wrong with the base in general. The X's indicate where your district number will be. The number sign is going to have a 1 for fall or a 2 for spring. If it's spring reporting period and your file comes out with a 1, changing the file name will not allow it to upload because there's something encoded in the file that also tells us that it's fall or spring. So make sure you go back and rerun that. If duplicate data exists, it will not load. If you get the stop sign, email us. Open and review your report. Always after a successful upload, you want to go straight to the reports page and open the preliminary audit report. This is what will show you your errors. After the first upload, have the schools take a look at that staff list, and we talked about that already, for any inaccuracies. Correcting issues, you want to make as many of your issue corrections in Infinite Campus as possible because that's where the data is considered the authoritative source. So you want to go back to Infinite Campus to make those corrections. And then you're going to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. Final edits can be done in the LEAD application, but we don't recommend switching to that until everything that's possibly done in Infinite Campus has been done. Step 5 is submitting the report. Before you sign off, have the school principal verify the full report for their school, looking for teachers with no courses, teachers missing, incorrect schedules, things like that. When you sign off, it does indicate that you are done and that the data is accurate. In this day and age of people doing open records requests, that has come into question a few times. Who signed off on this if it was not accurate? So you want to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. Be aware that anything that's still on the report as of November 1 will likely be reported to KDE. As in the past, from November 1st to November 15th, we here at the Standards Board will work through all of the reports, try to take a look at them, email you and say, hey, yes, they're cleared. No, they're not. This is what we still see. Can you clarify this? Most of you are aware that Mike Carr, our director for the Division of Certification, retired on the end of June, and so we do not yet have a director. So it may mean that even by lead time we don't have someone up to speed on that, so there may only be 2 of us doing these reviews. So just be aware that we may get one pass at them, but we likely will not get a second pass at these this year. So make sure they're as clean as possible. Looking at the preliminary audit report, just taking a look at that. The school information, you want to always review the first page for the staff warnings, the no courses for staff member, social security number not found in EPSB database, and then review each teacher's certification listing if they had, say, certification issue. Always remember that certification issue does not always mean that there's a problem with their certificate. If there are no errors, the list does not appear. This is what the assignment page looks like for each individual teacher with an error listing. I do want to go back a page though. Don't skip over this part of the LEAD report. This section right here is very important because all of these folks are not being audited at this point. So you want to make sure that they have something by which we can audit them. So the individual teacher shows their certification information. You will see in this list every certificate and status that they've ever held. If they've been teaching a while, this box gets pretty big, and you will likely see several that say certificate expired. As long as there are other statuses there, you're okay in most cases. Only the courses with errors are going to show. Munis-related errors are going to be in this yellow box. If there's not a Munis error or if Munis has not arrived, nothing will show here. The comments are what you look at to find what the problem is. For Munis, it's always going to say insufficient certification. For the course information, it will tell you a variety of things. Last thing we're going to look at are the report comments, just kind of going through what each of them mean as a reminder so you know how to evaluate the issue and go back to Infinite Campus and fix it. If it says certification issue, that means there is an error with one or more of the individual's courses or with their Munis job class code or both. It is not always indicative of a problem with the certificate. In fact, that's probably less than 10% of our true errors when we get started. Our true certification errors in that the individual doesn't have a valid certificate, they've never had a certificate, their certificate's expired, something like that. So most of the time they're miscodes. If you see the error comment, holds only SOE, must submit COE, that means the only valid credential is a statement of eligibility. As I've already said, a statement of eligibility is not valid for being in the classroom unless they have something else. If they're new, file the COE with our KTIP office. If they've finished KTIP, their current certification has expired and additional steps will need to be taken. The comment KTIP approved can indicate two different things. First, that they have recently completed KTIP, but the final report has not yet been submitted by the district coordinator. Maybe just a missing signature or something else going on there. The second time you might see that, and especially in the fall from September to October, is KTIP approved for individuals that are just being enrolled into KTIP. We're waiting for a teacher educator to be assigned to the committee, and so the internship certificate has not been processed. If you see either of those situations with the KTIP approved for more than 2 weeks, contact me because we'll need to get with KTIP staff to figure out what's happening there. KTIP final means that they've finished KTIP. We have the final report here on file, but processing is not complete due to one or more missing items. Majority of the time, they've not paid their $35. If they were on a temporary provisional certificate, there is some additional paperwork that will need to be filed. Specify content. The content is showing as none. You probably need to either assign a state course code or possibly reassign a state course code. The content will display as none if the course code has been deprecated, meaning that it was in use at one point but no longer is. So if you see none and you see a code that you think is the right code, go and have the school fix that code. If the state code is the 909999, the school will need to assign a content for each section on a section tab. You're not going to use that content drop down otherwise, and any content that's on that drop down other than for those 909999 classes are going to be ignored. Specify population means that the population is displaying on the LEAD report as none because there are no active students in the course. To fix this, there's a couple of things that may need to happen. You may need to assign students to a course. It may be that it's a new section that they're just starting to roll students into. More often, it is a section where all students have withdrawn. It was active at some point. It has grades and or attendance tied to it, so you cannot delete the course. You cannot leave the population as none, though. If the population says none because all students have withdrawn, you will need to go in and assign a population manually showing who was in the class when it was active, so we know how that course was reported. Out of field, the content for the course does not match the certification of the teacher. Check the state course code, make sure it's appropriate. Section tab to remove any incorrect content. And what I don't put on here, but what is more likely to cause most of the time with this, is check with the principal to see why they've placed someone in a position for which they hold no certification. Principals do have access to that permissions tool. Make sure they know it and use it. Unfortunately, that's where this out of field comment comes in a little more often than not. Out of population, those of you that have been doing this a while will remember that we've had some issues with this the last year or two. I've had some conversations with Infinite Campus. We think this will be fixed for this fall. I'm going to double check with KDE to make sure that we are on that before the September Infinite Campus release comes out. But the out of population comment means that one or more of the populations of the students does not match the certification of the teacher. Populations are assigned based on the students on the roster and cannot be changed. The only time that drop down is touched is if there's no students on the roster. Most of you are aware, but an FMD student does require a collaborating FMD certified teacher for LEAD purposes. They can be put in that section staff so you don't have to deal with the attendance and gradebook access. If the population is showing as general, and you know that every kid in there is supposed to be special ed, check the roster of students for special ed flags, locked IEPs, no overlapping IEPs. Again, that's the one that we've had some errors with this last year, some problems with how that's come out of Infinite Campus, and we think that is supposed to be fixed. Make sure your school is aware that a special ed teacher cannot teach general ed students except in a very few specific contents. Reading is not one of those. We've got a lot of misconceptions going out there that everybody under the sun can teach reading. There are a lot of people that can, but there are a lot more that cannot teach reading to general ed students. So make sure that your schools are aware of that as they're scheduling. You may need to change the special type if there's an out-of-population issue as far as an ESL student or a gifted student in a special ed class. The out-of-grade range is another one that comes from the students enrolled in the section, and if there are no students in there, it will default to the grade range of the school. You cannot edit it, so you may have to edit it on our website. Incorrectly coded is one that will only show up on the Edit Lead data page. If you see that, you need to go back to the preliminary audit report to see what the problem is. Insufficient certification. The teacher's certification does not match one or more of the parameters of the course. And usually it means that there's 2 errors or more. Occasionally our system will just get confused. Art and music teachers, if the population says none, it's not going to tell you specified population, it's going to tell you insufficient certification. Because those teachers normally can teach any population and it just gets confused. So that's where we as the human beings in the equation have to do a little bit of digging and figure out what the problem is. If it says insufficient certification as related to Munis, that just means they cannot clear that job class with their current certification. Maybe that a Munis job class code change is required. That has to go through your finance officer. They'll upload a new PSD file to KDE. All right, contact information. And I didn't put it on this slide either. I'm going to type my direct line number over here into the chat box over on the side. But you can get a hold of the EPSB LEAD team at ky.gov. That's a great email to use. The 1-800 number, if you're using that to get to me, dial 1 and then 3. Log in, user ID, and password help. I can usually help you with that, or our help desk can help you. The certification division, there's our 1-800 number. Dial 1 and then 1 to get into the queue to speak with a certification consultant. HQ questions, there's the EPSB HQ at ky.gov. So that goes to a team email address. Again, that 1-800 number. The LEAD manual is going to be available, and I'll send a link out to that as soon as I get that posted. Again, hopefully that's going to be by the end of the week, but if not, early next week. We do have a board meeting on Monday. So, are there any questions? I'll be sending out a survey here momentarily. I'm hoping I got everybody that was in on the call today. Looks like I think I did. So I appreciate you all joining me. Looks like we finished with 4 minutes to spare. So if you have any questions, we've got a few minutes. Or you can feel free to email me, call me. You all know that I try to be as accessible as possible. If I am in the office, I try to keep to a 24-hour turnaround on phone calls and emails, assuming I am here. So just give me a shout as you need me. Are there any questions? It's like somebody's typing. The PowerPoint that I went over today is not on the EPSB website yet. It will be posted as part of when I do the LEAD manual updates in the next few days. I believe I emailed everybody that had pre-registered for the session with that, but that may not have gotten to you. But I will be posting that at this email address, the epsb.ky.gov /certification/lead within the next week or so. So I'll email everybody once that comes out. Are there any other questions today? Y'all are a quiet bunch, so call me as you need me, and I'll be glad to help you. Thanks so much, and have a great day.